to allow colleagues to join us, because I can see them coming in right swiftly and fast now. But just a few housekeeping matters before we start. You can see from the slide there that we'd very much welcome you using the chat pane to ask questions throughout the session this afternoon. We're very keen to hear your questions, and I know our speaker colleagues are keen to answer them if they can. We will be recording this session, and so any of you that then see that you've learned something really interesting you'd like to share with colleagues, you'll be well able to share the findings of today with your colleagues there. That will be via the UCISA website as usual. Do remember during the session, if you could just mute your microphone and switch off your camera whilst the speakers are speaking. But obviously, once we get to Q&A, it'd be lovely to see as many of you as we can, so that we can see who'd be very, very keen to speak. Feel free to use the raise hand function throughout if you wish to. There's something you feel is really pertinent to a point that's being made. We're more than happy to take those as we go through. So we're beginning to get up to some good numbers. We've still got a few people joining us. So perhaps I'll just spend a few moments setting the scene whilst the final people come, because I need to be clear, I'm very much the warm-up act today. The session that we have is sponsored by Cognizant, and it comes out of an excellent breakfast session that they and their partners Galvia gave at the UCISA Leadership Conference. But I'm always very conscious that our leadership conference is aimed at very much the CIOs or the senior managers within an organisation. And when I heard the presentation, I really felt that there were many, many colleagues throughout UCISA and throughout all our member institutions that would find what they had to say really interesting. So I was very keen to ensure that this message got a wider audience. So that's when we began to talk to Cognizant and Galvia about this webinar, because of course it is much more ecumenical. It does allow colleagues from different disciplines, from all areas of the university to join in and hear and be enthused by and inspired by really interesting ideas. So I hope that possibly sets the scene for you. I've just realised I haven't introduced myself. I'm Deborah Green. I'm the CEO of UCISA. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here today. We are joined by a strong variety of speakers. We're joined by Josephine Walsh, who's the Head of Student Engagement at the University of Galway, and she's going to share her experience of implementing some of the ideas that we're going to hear about today. And I know members always love it when they hear direct from colleagues that have been through the experience that we're advocating. We're also joined by John Clancy, who's the founder and CEO of Galvia, Firoz Khan Patan, who's the Strategic Client Relationship Manager for Higher Education for Cognizant, waving to us now. Nice to see you, Firoz. And then last but by no means least, by James Rowley, who's the Director of Innovation and Advanced Technologies at Cognizant. And it's at this point that I hand over to James, who's going to lead us through the rest of the session. So over to you, James.
Great, thanks, Deborah. Hi, everyone. Nice to have you on the call, and thanks for taking the time out today. Just to give you a sort of rough overview of today's call, really, we're going to be talking about student engagement, but also around kind of artificial intelligence and machine learning within institutions. We obviously have our special guest, Josephine Walsh, who's going to give us that real insight as well. And we have John Clancy and Firoz as well to give their kind of inside views from both Cognizant and Galvia. So I think first of all, I'd kick off with really kind of some of the issues that we've found within digital transformation in educational institutions. These are the main sort of issues that we found are coming to the brim really. And just to talk through some of these, and what I'll do after this is open up the floor to get your views as well. So we're finding that there's a need for an improved user experience. There's a lot of personalization through technology, which is allowing sort of advanced interaction, and students' expectations, of course, have changed now. People need really usable interfaces. They need things to be working first time. Of course, you've then got remote and on-site learning as well. So after COVID, not to bang on about COVID, I think everyone does. But after that, we've now got students not just in the institutions themselves, but also around the world. And we have that kind of hybrid model where now we're finding a lot of systems will need to connect, and and given the fact that we've got the birth of AI as it is, there's a huge amount of analytics and data that's now available. And of course, as you can see, things are changing pretty much day by day at the moment in this area. We've also got mental health awareness as well. This has very much come to the fore, not just for staff, but also for the students as well. Students are needing this direct support around the clock, 24/7, 365. We're finding that lecturers are also needing that support as well. So we're finding a lot of institutions are starting to lean on machine learning and AI to really kind of help support that and to connect everyone together. Finally, we've got the competitiveness as well. So things like improving those work efficiencies and of course with the cost of living and the cost of everything else at the moment, we're finding that we're having to improve efficiencies across that entire ecosystem. We've got a lot of old legacy systems that are needing updated within institutions, and a lot of this has happened, starting to happen pretty fast, or having to happen pretty fast. We're finding as well that there's lots of administrative tasks that need automated as well, and that's something that we're finding machine learning and AI is very much taking place for. But I'll open up the floor just now for anyone in the audience. Just it'd be good to get your views around any kind of problems that you're experiencing within this kind of sector. Josephine, maybe you could, is there anything that you've found particularly?
I think for us, I'm not a technology person, so my journey is the story of somebody who's trying to make students' lives better and enhance their student experience. So I think, for us, we've done focus groups with our students to map the student journey. And when I heard when we asked them for a metaphor to describe the student journey, and the one they agreed on was a jungle. And I think that's probably, not saying anything negative about our university, I think that's probably the systems that we create for students right across the higher education sector. So for us, it was really around mental health and well-being in its broad sense is true, so that we're not adding to that anxiety by making it difficult for students to access supports and information.
Great, that's good to know. Deborah, you've got a really kind of overarching view of all the institutions. Is there anything you want to add to this at all?
Only to say this is becoming an increasing topic for people. We've been, there's been engagement with AI and AI-powered student engagement for some time. Perhaps first started during clearing, when many people, quite a few years ago, started to introduce AI engagement with students to try and speed up the clearing process and try and capture some of the many hundreds of calls that used to be dropped during that period. So I think it's an area where there's a huge interest, but I do think there's quite a few institutions that really are at a bit of a loss as to where to start, and therefore would like to do more in this area. And I suppose they're also interested in the very human aspects of this, because often anything to do with AI can engender quite a lot of fear in institutions in terms of, what will the impact be on jobs and people. So I'm sure they'd be interested to hear in that. And that's why it's useful, Josephine, that you're not a techie, as you put it yourself. It is very much, this is a very holistic experience, and it's staff from all sorts of disciplines that may be impacted by work and projects of this nature. So I think that that view that you bring will be really helpful to members.
Yeah. Great, that's good to know. I'll just take a pause there in case anyone else has got any questions at this point.
Well, no, James, I just want to echo, I think, what Josephine had said at the start of the webinar, is that this was a journey, I think, with the University of Galway. And I think we started by looking at what the problem was, and regardless of the tool that you use, you need to be focused on how to improve student engagement in order so students can journey through university life, better and with success. And as Josephine correctly pointed out, we think they have an ever-increasing need to feel more engaged with their university, with the combination of remote and on-site. And hopefully the student engagement platform that we've developed and some of the insights Josephine will give will throw some light on that, I think, during this webinar.
Great. No, we look forward to that. Thanks, John. So I think I just take this slide here really to, I'm not sure how many people are technical here, how many people know of the different types of AI and machine learning. Obviously, AI and machine learning are very, very different. Machine learning being more around algorithms and and these algorithms are trained up to do specific jobs, whereas AI can be a much larger set of data and kind of given much freer reign, I suppose, really. So I've taken 3 different columns here, you'll see. So we've got the different kind of leaders really within each of these models, and I'll explain what these models are. Large language models are generally where we've got most of the focus at the moment in the industry. We've got things like GPT 3 and 4, which I'm sure everyone's heard of. I'm sure everyone's children have probably used this to do some of their homework, or you've had to play around with it. But there's a lot of these new chat type interfaces which are being run on these large language models. We've just recently had something called Llama, which is from Meta, previously Facebook. This is a 75 billion parameter large language model that probably costs around £7-8 million to actually train up and produce. So these large models are, exactly what they say they are. They can do problem solving. You can chat to them, and they respond in a way that's kind of almost very human. They're almost a little too confident, even if they're completely lying as well. So that's one thing to be aware of. We've been playing around with certainly GPT-4, where it starts to quote references from books that don't even exist by authors that don't even exist, but very confidently does this. So it's something to be aware of, that these models are very, very useful. I think they're probably underused at the moment. I think everyone's probably tried to use them and then sort of moved on, but incredibly useful for things like problem solving. But something to be aware of is that they're not perfect, much like humans. They are trained up in specific ways. They're trained up with data, usually up to about 2021 as well, 2022. So not necessarily got the latest in understanding there. But this will only get better, as we'll see. Some use cases for these are around student facilities, which John will talk about. We've also got research access and analysis, so brilliant for being able to pull together some research. Authoring and marking. I've even contemplated using GPT-4 to write some of the text for this presentation, but decided against it. And things like advisory services as well, chatbots, stuff like that. Brilliant, because the way that they respond is very eloquently and very diplomatically. You'll find that a lot of these responses that these models give are very kind of uniform. Document processing as well, of course, is brilliant. That's been going for a while now with OCR, and I'm sure a lot of universities have got that in place. But being able to chat to documents as well is something that's relatively recent. So you would upload something like a PDF, a research paper, but then be able to ask that research paper questions in plain English and get answers back almost immediately. So that's the large language models. Then if we move into the middle one, which is probably not as useful, but in certain genres possibly useful. These are called diffusion models, mainly used for creating images. And you've got ones such as DALL-E, Stable, and probably the most impressive one is Midjourney. And I'd suggest you guys go and have a look at that online after this call. Midjourney does some absolutely amazing imagery. So you can type in, I want a picture of a deer on a mountain, and it will do a very, very impressive version of that. You can change things like the lighting. So brilliant for image assistance, for creating coursework, for infographic generation, and for assisting presentations, not such as this one. Finally, you've got vision models as well, and these are probably the most exciting, I think, really. You've got YOLO, which is an open source model. Now, what YOLO does is identifies things like objects, so it can track things, track people. So we're using it, for example, in sport to track players. We're using it in education to track things like experiments. It's also very, very useful for starting to do things like remote proctoring, for having like visual research assistants. And then it's great for picking up things even like student and staff well-being, just without having to do things like facial recognition, being able to kind of monitor the welfare of your staff and your students. And then finally, for institutions, this is brilliant for things like operations. So being able to spot things like hazards and spills around your operations, for things like crowd control. if you're running any events at these institutions. There's a whole world of stuff there, which I'm happy to talk about. And then finally, I guess you're starting to see model marketplaces as well, where, you know, some things that you might just want to easily kind of train up are now available in these marketplaces. So there's a lot of kind of off-the-shelf stuff that can really kind of help you get going in this area. And there's 3 of the main marketplaces there: Gravity, Hugging Face, and Model.ai. So I'll just kind of pause there, really, just if anyone's, that's probably a large topic there, but if anyone has any questions at the moment, please do let me know. Great. Right, I'm going to move on now to our first use case. So, John, over to you, really, and Josephine, and this is to talk through the student engagement platform that you have recently deployed at the University of Galway in Ireland. Over to you, John.
Thank you, James. I suppose we'll take these, maybe Josephine, in, you know, kind of 4 steps really, because we used a staged approach for to improve student engagement. And as we touched on earlier, students have an ever-increasing need to feel more engaged with the university, and they expect a high level of personalized service that they get with the brands like Netflix and Spotify and Amazon that touch their daily lives. They now expect that from a university. So I think as step 1 on our journey with the University of Galway, we developed a virtual assistant, which was actually named by the students, called Cara, which is the Irish for friend, which was a gender-neutral AI that was on hand 24/7 to prompt, alert, and engage students with all the university's information at their fingertips. Why a virtual assistant? Because we needed to go where students are, and they're on their smartphones, and typically in WhatsApp. So this experience of a virtual assistant to help students 24/7, 365 is delivered through WhatsApp. It's delivered through the university's app. It's delivered through the university's website. It's via SMS. I think it's really important that you need to go to where students are. I don't know how you feel about that, Josephine, and that maybe if you want to put some light on that journey, as you know, creating the personality of Cara, naming Cara, and then deploying it.
Yeah, and yeah, so it's available on various websites, on student services websites, and on a variety of other services in the university, and students can engage on WhatsApp as well. However, what we found was that students, we made a decision fairly early on, and we discussed it at length. Should we have a single sign-on? And we decided not to. So we don't know who the students are, and they know we don't know who they are on the web version. So, and I actually think we debate this regularly. I actually think that's been part of the success, is that anonymity. So they know, like, Big Brother is not watching, so you can ask whatever you like. And I think that's been part of the success. WhatsApp, it's also available on WhatsApp, but that's been limited. It's been really interesting to see that. I really wanted it on WhatsApp, because then we'd have a number. So if somebody said something, and we have had students say sexual assault and you know, deep depression, etc., and on WhatsApp we can reach back out to them. On the web version we can't, but they do have the option to speak. Every student gets the option to speak to a person. We've had a good number of those. So I think that's been a really interesting one for us, is to maintain that anonymity. We've had over 15,000 questions. It is available 24/7. 15,000 in the last year or thereabouts, and only about 10% have been failed, and very few of that, less than a couple of hundred, have been transferred to a human. So Cara is answering the question. So a lot of them are first level type questions. You know, I've lost my ID card or whatever, but we do have, you know, we do have those other kind of more more disturbing, I suppose, questions the student asks, and Cara can cope with that. And we might talk about that later in terms of sensitive flows and all the rest that we've built in. Yeah. And I mean, it came from, I suppose, John, I know we don't want to bang on about COVID, but it kind of came from COVID, when, you know, we locked down and we realized we had a monster of a website that was hard to find anything, and nobody could drop into an office anymore to ask. So it kind of came from that. You know, how do we maintain our business, I suppose, and maintain the supports to students and help them to find things easily, you know, and that's kind of where Cara came from, and why we started on this journey, looking at how do we make that information more accessible to them.
And I also think, Josephine, you touched on the point there about the journey. It is key to the start was the collaboration and the wider collaboration of the teams within the university. You know, we involved, and you involved, web services, marketing, communications, student services, the student body, that there was a holistic approach to this. And I think that has led to the success of it. That and this AI will only represent the data in the corpus of the university. It will not go off-piste. It's not going to come up with an opinion. It will factually find information and answers as accurately as possible. And if it can't, then it will escalate this to a real person that's there to support.
And I think that's important. It's not generative AI. So Cara isn't kind of drawing conclusions, and it's literally giving the information that we have given to Cara, and it's not making, so it's all the only decision Cara is making is this, to what degree is this answer accurate or not? To what percentage is this accurate or not? And that if the student then says, no, I didn't get the answer I wanted, then Cara will go looking for something else and then eventually transfer. So it's not making any moral or ethical kind of decisions. It's fairly straightforward in terms of the data that it's accessing. Yeah,
which is really important. And then if we move, I suppose, to kind of step 2, which is connect the dots with data here. You know, that sounds great, but we're looking at this is more about empowering student services and the team that's around Josephine and around other student services in universities to build a picture. I think of what you like to call is the heartbeat of the university, Josephine.
Yeah. And as I see somebody put in the chat there, Trevor, one of our problems is, in universities is that, the data set that we're very poor. And I suppose where we set out was not to fix the whole university, but was kind of for us who are concerned about student support, how do we get a true picture of students and their well-being and how they feel about us, I suppose. And, one of the things I think we're good at in universities is gathering lots of dots, but kind of connecting those dots then is another challenge entirely. So Cara sits within another few projects. So at around the same time, and they were all connected, there was purpose to the overall project. So we opened a small student inquiry centre. We set up a team of student advisors across the colleges. We established a group we call the Galway 100, which it's kind of a perfect sample of the university, if you like, in terms of representing the diversity of the student body. And we check in with them regularly and they give us advice, etc. And we mapped the student journey. So Cara is kind of the anchor for that. So Cara is the starting point for us to say, do we have a problem? Are students experiencing a problem? So every week we meet, we review what's happening on Cara, what's trending on Cara, what are the words, and then we start saying, okay, are we hearing that in the Student Inquiry Centre? Are we hearing it from the student advisors? So it's really, we've been alerted, like we found things. We now know what we didn't know, so we've avoided now like 2 students rambling into the SU with an issue, which then becomes a thing, but it's a handful of students. So now we can actually, through Cara, we can say, is this actually a problem? So we found things about Wi-Fi. Cara was the first, we had an issue with our Wi-Fi. Cara, that's where we saw it first. So then we started digging, and then that led to a student communication. We do a weekly e-zine as well, so it's driving the information that we're giving. So it really is giving us the data. We feel anyway that it's closing a gap for us, and it's that anchor piece in the data that we then triangulate with the other things we're hearing.
Can I just
interrupt there for a moment, John, just to say there's a couple of questions in the chat that I think are particularly pertinent at this moment. There's a question about does it integrate automatically with your service management and inquiry management systems should a student need to be referred on?
No. At the moment, we are. We discussed this at the time we started this, and we discussed it with ISS, and they said, okay, follow this route as a strategic solution to a particular problem. But we're getting a new student record system at the minute. There's a big student digital pathways project on at the moment. So we're not linking, but we have an eye on that all of the time. But that's not ready yet, and it won't be ready for about a year. So I'm really glad that we've got something in the meantime, but it's not, no, we're not linking, but that's where we would like it to link in once Banner is in place, that we would be able to automatically book an appointment, that if somebody, if that's the suggestion to the student, that they could automatically then book an appointment with careers or whoever. Yeah.
So to
John,
clarify, it's got the capacity to do so. It's simply
Yes.
in your project that the timing wasn't right for you.
It's the timing is not right. Exactly. Yeah.
And I suppose on a similar, well, there's a couple of extra ones. Is Cara open to all students, i.e. prospective students, or only those that are actually at Galway?
Oh, this is a conundrum at the minute. It's only on so it's on web pages that are open to everybody. And what we have seen in the last few months is that prospective students are finding it, and we can see the questions. So we're discussing now with our student recruitment and our international office to say, guys, we're only got and it's clearly branded when you go into Cara, that this is for current students. So we've tried to cut off the prospective students at the moment and kind of direct them to, we have a button which we changed very quickly. The current student or a prospective student, the prospective students are sent off to a specific website. But we're going to have to grasp that nettle soon, because it is being used by prospective students. So we're going to have to start getting the information into Cara that can answer those questions, because I'm very conscious it's not a good experience for a prospective student to ask a question and then get, I can't answer you. So that's not good enough. So we're going to have to go start looking at that now, where it's on the agenda.
Victims of your own success there, it sounds to me like, as that's fantastic. And I suppose the other question which is worth posing right now is, how long did it take you to develop and implement this, so people have got a sense of the journey that you've been on?
Well, we started talking about it. I only came into this role. I'm seconded. I was head of careers, and I'm seconded into this role. I came into this in March 2021. Started researching how could we address this issue. We went out to tender for, we said, a proof of concept project. We engaged with a number of suppliers. Galvia were chosen. We started I think around the end of July with you guys. And we were ready with Cara in October, and then we had a cyber attack in November. So that kind of put the kibosh on everything for a while. But we're continuously update every week. We have a great small team here who are never short of ideas, and we always have something. We're constantly saying, what if, and what could it do? And yeah, so it's been really exciting journey to see the output from it.
Lovely. I don't want to interrupt your flow too much. I'll let you carry on. Jennifer, I'll come back to you towards the end with the final question.
No, I think it was a great question, and sorry for jumping in, Josephine, but I think it goes back to the start of when we looked at the project. Yes, we're now in a position whereby other departments and other areas of the university are interested in putting their messaging, their data into Cara, because we started small, really. We started in one area. Yeah. How do we improve student services? And now we're looking at get that right, understand the integrations, understand the capabilities, the systems, the teams, and then look at, okay, where do we go next? Let's widen this. Yeah. And hopefully we'll move to prospective students, in the short term. But it's an exciting area, and it's been driven by demand, which was really what we wanted, I think, Josephine, from the start, is that we want the students telling us where do they want this to go, not us dreaming in a room. This would be a nice to have. It's driven by the analytics. It's driven by the traffic and the engagement from students. Yeah, yeah. Which is great. So then if I move on to 3, which is regaining control of your data, and I think this was a couple of questions in the chat about data and poor data sets. A key part of this is self-sufficiency. We have weekly meetings with the university, which is really important to keep that relationship and understanding. But we've also, like part of the platform is a content management system that helps the university support teams to create, control, and collect knowledge in one place, to simplify the sharing process, especially between various departments. And we give the power to create these answers based on the top questions that students are asking, because as we know, college life is quite cyclical. The support staff now have the power to prioritize certain questions that are more relevant to certain times of the year. So when a student logs on and it's exam time, they can see the top 5 trending questions around exams, paying my exam fees maybe, and then after the exams, how do I register for my, to reset an exam or pay a late fee? And I think it's that ability for the University of Galway to have the data in one place. So you're in total control of what Cara is saying and how you're going to feed it with that, feedback loop from Cara. I think that's been an interesting experience, Josephine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you mentioned the featured questions. So we can, when a student goes into Cara, they can see on the web version, they can see the 5 featured questions. So we review them every week, to see if they're still relevant, and we tie them into the student journey. But then, so what we've learned is, and we know the student journey is not linear, and so let's say coming up to fees deadlines, this was one of our stories. The fees deadline was the 31st of October. Therefore, we said we're taking off all the fees related questions. And then Cara still following week, Cara was still getting questions on fees. We checked in with the Student Inquiry Centre. Yes, we're getting questions on fees. Students who had missed the deadline, students who hadn't the money to pay the fees, etc. So Cara, if we didn't have Cara, we would have stopped our communications around fees. So Cara was able to tell us, the fees was still an issue for our students, and paying those fees and having the money to pay them. But the featured questions we debate, this is another thing we debate regularly. Are they the top questions the student ask because that's what they need, or are they the top questions because we featured them? So that's kind of something that we talk about regularly. I think that the other thing about having that control ourselves, like we have an operations meeting every Wednesday, we review what's going on. We look at failed questions. So that's a part of our review, is what did Cara not answer? So, I saw there before I came in, they'll be meeting now at 2:00. Like somebody asked about, where can I charge my electric scooter? Now that's definitely not up anywhere. So by the time the meeting is over, somebody will have put up an answer into that. So if Cara's asked again, where can I charge my electric scooter? They have the answer. So we're able to do that in the meeting. There's a failed question. We should be able to answer that. And, where showers, that was another thing. Where can I have a shower? And if students are running and they're not a member of the gym or whatever. So that triggered a question. So we can create the answers, instantly almost. But then a lot of questions are coming from URLs. So the CMS is either a URL or, questions that we create that don't sit easily on a website, or like that electric scooter. It's just something that's, it's easier to just put up an answer rather than find who owns the website that, and ask them to add it to it. So we have a lot of control.
And then finally, and I think we touched on this earlier, Josephine, is that when we look at AI and look at behavior and look at, alerts to trigger better student support, I think what we've really learned here is that being able to have a window into, especially around the area of mental health and well-being. And I think in particular, I remember there was a student that was feeling overwhelmed, and I think it was like maybe 6:00 in the morning, and they reached out via Cara. And because we had mapped what we call a sensitive care pathway that the university physically have, we mapped that into Cara. So that student was getting support, albeit from an AI at 6:00 in the morning, but at least it was getting support and somebody was there to answer and help them. And in parallel, and it goes back to an earlier question we had in the chat regarding integrations, the University of Galway use Microsoft Teams, and they're all on a Microsoft Teams channel in the support services. And it triggered that alert to say, hey, this student is in trouble because they provided their details and somebody needs to reach out. And I think when the college arrived in the morning, they were able to give a call directly to that student. And in the past, I feel, Josephine, because we've discussed this at length, is that sometimes they got lost in voicemails or emails, or may never have been heard. But at least that really made an impactful, I think, difference to a student.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges anybody involved in student support in higher education knows that one of our concerns always are the students who don't reach out, you know, the students who need help, but they're not comfortable reaching out. And I think that's why I was saying earlier about the anonymity, that I think the students are asking questions now who might not have walked into an office to ask a person that question. And, you know, I think there's a lot of research around that too, around, you know, people being more comfortable maybe dealing with AI or a chatbot rather than dealing with an actual person. So I think for us, that's really a plus, is that I feel we're reaching students who wouldn't actually walk into an office or email a person to ask for help.
I see James coming on probably to shut me up shortly. But James,
Yeah.
I was going to wrap up with something really important here, is that there's also a barometer we find into, as you call it, I'm stealing a phrase from you now, Josephine, a finger on the pulse, because we've also developed a new feature around the topic extraction about what are they actually talking about, every student, and then looking at, okay, there's a push-pull with Cara. So we're looking at pushing out questions to students. How do they feel about a certain topic? And then we can extract the sentiment around that. I think, Josephine, that's, you know, from our point of view and from your point of view, I think that's been an exciting new feature on the platform.
Yeah, that's we're looking forward to. Yeah, that's going to be really tell us how students, and that's given us the data live. You know, it's not a survey that we get results 6 months later that then we rationalize the results and we don't have to do anything about it. This is very real time. Ask them a question, they tell us, and we analyze that, and yeah, we can do something about it. I'm conscious of time now.
Great. Grant, well, listen, thank you very much. That's fantastic. So there's just also, in the interest of time, I'll quickly run through just another use case. This is the final use case that we've got. This is something that Cognizant delivered for the Cambridge University, and really to kind of take you back to the main problem was that there's an authoring team at Cambridge Mathematics who probably consists of around 6 or 7 people. Now, they're very busy people. They are pulling things like research papers, they're pulling in the national curriculum, they're pulling in other curriculums and textbooks. They're reading those documents and then analysing them and putting them into a framework which sits inside of Cambridge Maths. Now, that framework is then used for creating things like coursework, for exams, and for kind of just general search purposes. So this was taking a lot of time of these people who are already pretty busy. And what we've actually managed to produce for them was an artificial intelligence system. I guess it's more around kind of machine learning than AI, but what it would do, you would be able to feed in things like research papers. It would pull in things like the national maths curriculum. It would then read that, semantically analyze it, and then place that automatically into the system. So this, you know, we first of all, I guess we had to really start with some clean data and ensure that data that was going in there was as clean as possible. That's where the Cambridge leaned upon Cognizant to ensure that data was clean. We then trained up various different models to ensure that you know, these were basically maths models really, that were aware of mathematical text. So they would then take that specific piece of text and map it directly into the appropriate area of that framework. And what came out the back of that was pretty amazing, actually. You know, to give you one probably great example was the Iran. Some schools in Iran, the national curriculum in Iran is taking a year longer to run students through than it is in the UK. So usually something like a gap analysis program would take several months, you know, if not up to a year, to adjust those curriculums to fit in with, say, a UK curriculum. We were actually able to do that gap analysis in about 2 days. And then re-provide the curriculum back to Iran so that it was much more efficient and much more in line with the UK. So this system, we started off, I guess there's some questions around, if you look, I think we've got one here about how do you plan and provide the best solution for different use cases. For example, automation can deliver quickly at often lower cost, but machine learning and especially AI can deliver a more sophisticated solution, but at a higher cost. Well, that's a good point. I mean, machine learning is very cheap to kind of integrate. Obviously, things like AI require training, and I think that's where a lot of institutions have leaned upon Cognizant and the expertise that we've got internally to actually run those training exercises. We've also got things like that are coming out called, I guess, compression techniques. So it enables you to be able to start training up models much quicker and much more efficiently than was previously possible. So I hope that answers your question. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to our next slide. Now, this is really, I guess, with John, myself, and Josephine have all had a little chat around what kind of things you need to think about when you're incorporating these within your institution. Privacy is obviously key here. We just need to ensure that we're adhering to GDPR, and with lots of data coming from various different systems, we generally will work in-house with any in-house cloud systems to ensure that any data is not being pushed around to various different cloud systems that are outside the remit of that university or institution. Security is key again. We need to make sure that those models are protected and the entire infrastructure is protected against data leaks and hackers. And that's something that obviously Cognizant have a best practices approach on. We have our own security leads there who can assist with that. Training as well. Training of models is something that you have to be very careful with. I think when you're training any new models, you can sometimes overtrain them. You should ensure, I guess, you've got clean data, and data cleansing is absolutely key. But when you're training models as well, you can do something called overtraining them, where a model becomes perfectly brilliant at, say, predicting where the national curriculum should go. But then if you overtrain it or give it some wrong information, it can then tip over to the other edge and start producing wrong results. So generally, we'll have a kind of ML ops or an AI ops type process, which will sit in place to ensure that any training of models is kept in line and is well calibrated. Integration, again, of course, that's just ensuring that you have a seamless integration of your legacy systems, which a lot of institutions have, and ensuring that those will actually integrate with any new systems. Generally, that's done through REST APIs. To be honest, that seems to be the most common factor that we're dealing with here. And cloud processing, again, it's a big topic at the moment because a lot of people are still quite afraid of putting a lot of their data within clouds such as AWS, in terms of Azure, these kind of big fives. No one's entirely sure where that data is going, so we're actually suggesting a lot of the time they either have on-prem. If you need to have your cloud, then keep new systems, then keep it within your existing clouds. But there's now some great advances in technology where we're able to run and even train AI models and ML models directly on-prem on very kind of low CPU devices. So I'll just move on because I know that we're running out of time here. This is the final slide, really, in terms of what you can see, what you can expect to see within education over the next sort of 5 years. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of kind of automation of these administrative tasks. We certainly, personally, I've seen things like exam authoring. I think that there's a lot of exam authors who possibly thought they were maybe going to carry on producing questions for exams, but we're now finding that some AI is actually starting to produce and write exams and coursework itself. We're seeing grading and scheduling and record management for educators as well coming into place. With regards to assessments, we're starting to see, and this is specifically with Cambridge Maths actually, where we can start adjusting the coursework and adjusting the curriculum based on the type of person you're dealing with. So if someone was struggling with a certain part of mathematics, we'd be very easily able to reroute around that so they could still complete the curriculum and complete the coursework, but in a different way. So this is becoming, that incredibly sort of personalized assessments are becoming quite popular. And again, that falls into the sort of personalized learning as well, where we're able to start producing much more tailored experiences and feedback systems for each students, which is really great, in terms of being able to cater for every single student. And I think that in return keeps students retained, it keeps students interested and piqued, and they feel sort of trust within the institution there. So I guess the final one is really around data-driven insights. So improving things like curriculum design, identifying struggling students. These systems are going to be able to very quickly identify that. And I think even today, we can start to see some of that taking place. So I'm just going to open up the floor now to any questions. If someone wants to read any out, or if anyone wants to shout out, please let me know.
There was a straightforward one that somebody might have missed. What model did you use for Cara? Was it ChatGPT, etc.? It's one of the clarification questions asked.
Yep, thanks, Deborah. I replied in the chat there, but no, we didn't use ChatGPT. The capability is there to incorporate. We see, generative AI as another tool that a university might want to incorporate, but I think it's really important that it represents actual data, as in, our technology, we use the latest conversational AI tools to find me the right answer from a student's perspective, not from a generative AI is find me the most plausible fake answer. I think it's really important to have this buried in a place of truth rather than for now, but the capability regarding document search, all that, there's fantastic capabilities there, and the capability is there, but we haven't done this yet.
And there was a question for Josephine about how long it took you to design and implement all of this.
Yeah, July, we started in July with Galvia, and we had something, July 21, and we had a launch in October 21. Yeah. But then we've been, adding to it and developing as we go to, we've learned together, I think.
Yeah.
And you were keen to stress it's an ongoing journey, weren't you, Josephine? There are other things you're going to add, but it was able to spin something up that was useful quite quickly.
Yeah, well, right from the beginning, to ask Cara was the beginning, but right from the beginning, we were exploring how can we have students tell Cara. So that's what we're, so they're actually telling us that it's a two-way. So we're actually doing that now and we've been testing this sentiment analysis where we can do a campaign maybe 2 or 3 times a semester and say, tell us what you're thinking about, whatever. And we've tested that with our Galway 100 around exam study spaces, exam supports, our weekly student wellbeing easing, and we've got loads, and we've seen how that works, and we got really valuable information just from the testing that we've been doing and reporting that we can then take actions on. So I think for me, that's really important. You tell us something, we understand what you've said, and now we're responding to that. That's really important, and that we can do that now in a short space of time.
And I think, Josephine, to echo that, it's that, the student engagement platform is that framework to enable to engage better, analyze better, and understand how students are behaving. And that's the kind of capability we have developed by listening and, by the data telling us where this needs to go next.
Yeah.
We're beginning to get quite a few questions now. Without going into too much detail, did you run into any challenges with potential security risks? A very important question there.
Well, I think, if I'll take this, maybe Cognizant might want, that's why we kind of partner with Cognizant, is that it's really important here that, from a data point of view, we deploy this platform within the university's 4 walls. There's no call outs here to any third-party software. This is deployed either in your private cloud, in your Azure, in your Google, or in your AWS infrastructure. It can also be deployed on-prem. And it's deployed using a Kubernetes containerized deployment, which is extremely secure. We haven't been hacked to date, and to hack us, you would have to hack the university's Microsoft Azure or their private cloud system.
That's a good point, John. I think as well that we find that we'll tend to run any of these processes through some fairly rigorous security testing before that's deployed, and that's just using industry standard best practices. We're fortunate at places like Cognizant to have entire security teams there as well who will manage that for us. So that's a real advantage for us.
And you've also got a question about the overall costs. It's no more detailed than that. So what about overall costs, the questioner asks? Probably posed to Josephine, I should think. How did that project work for you?
Well, we started out with no money. I mean, this was something that came as a proof of concept project. So it was, I'm not going to say how much, but it was affordable. It wasn't, blown out. I mean, we started with no budget for this and we managed to do it. So let's put it that way.
That's the most helpful advice you can give, Josephine, because that's where most people will be at this point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
I'm sure privately you'd talk to people if they wanted to speak to you.
Mm.
And I think just to echo what Josephine said there, it's looking at this of, okay, let's do a proof of value over 3 to 6 months. Let's deliver it. We're, Galvia and Cognizant are very confident in the product. So we go to universities and say, okay, let's start the journey. We've done it before with these universities. We're very confident we can do it with you. Let's do a proof of value for 3 to 6 months. If that works, then let's look at a longer term relationship. And that's typically, I think, how we went, and that's how we went with the University of Galway. And that's, I think, because we have confidence in what the platform can do for universities.
There's a couple of questions we might usefully run together here. How did you manage data protection and enabling students to opt in or out? Or is this a tool that students need to register for? And have you had any challenges from students about how their data is used?
Yeah, you see, I was saying earlier on, it's not single sign-on, so anyone can go into it. So anybody on the chat here can go in and try it out if they want to. So there's no signing on, there's no logging in, there's, anybody can add. That's why the prospective students are able to use it as well. So there's no data. I'm sure if we really wanted to, we could track, IP addresses or whatever, but there is no data. They're not giving us any personal data. But even if we did, at registration, students are kind of signing something saying that, if we sign into a university system, we understand that our data is being, you can use our data, but for certain things, obviously. But we have discussed it thoroughly with our data protection officer. When we moved to WhatsApp, I was a bit concerned about that because that is an identifiable number. But no, it's all good.
Great, thank you. And you've had a big endorsement from Richard Barber saying, I really like the sentiment, find me the right answer, not necessarily the most plausible answer. And I think that you're right, that's what sets this apart. ChatGPT will just give you something, won't it? Did you therefore prioritise a knowledge base of specific questions and answers rather than scanning web pages and using AI to identify potential responses?
No, we identified specific URLs that we felt had information that students needed to access. So we've added exams, library, etc. So Cara is not scanning the whole website and just finding what they can find. Cara has been given specific links to our website, and there are specific questions. Now, when we started out first, we just loaded up all the FAQs we had created during COVID, and we kind of pulled that back then. So there are the URLs. So it's not running through the entire website. It's got specific URLs, and then we can see every week what has Cara failed to answer. So is there a URL there that we can add so that the next time they're asked, they get the right answer, or do we add an actual question? So that's how we're building the CMS, if you like, based on what students are asking.
Really helpful. I'm assuming we will be able to share these slides with our members at the end of it. That's one of the questions we've had. Yeah, lovely. So we'll make sure that comes in, and we'll send over to everybody that's attended today. We'll make sure they're emailed out to you, so no problem there. So you can all, because somebody had to leave us a little bit early, so we'd like to see the slides. Jolly good.
Yeah,
James, yes. Go ahead.
Yes, Deborah, Josephine, and James and John, thank you. I think this is a fascinating discussion so far, especially about learning about what are the experiences that the University of Galway had and how they have overcome the challenges through the solution. I think the key takeaway here is definitely about how student engagements and student collaborations can be enhanced through these AI-powered solutions. And there is one typical reading or example that I have read in the recent past was that the average number of students who had unfortunately suicide in between 2016 to 2020 is approximately 360 due to multiple reasons, and majority of them due to the mental healthness and mental well-being. If AI and ML and ChatGPT sort of solution could bring down such kind of scenarios by collaborating the systems, processes, and people, And yes, I think that would be a best solution that to look forward. And definitely moving forward, in the next near future, the technologies are keep evaluating, and during this process, we keep on engaging with the universities to understand those challenges. And I think this is one critical part that Deborah had also mentioned, when we had the last conversation during the UCISA conference. This topic would require a larger audience, and also Cognizant does share the same sort of feelings as that of UCISA, that we want to connect with the people, we want to share our experiences and bring it to the larger forums so that we contribute back to the university as well. So I believe that everybody had a good understanding about what AI-powered solutions could bring to the table within the higher education segment. And I'm very sure that there may be potential questions and more discussions that may be needed, because end of the day, we had only 60 minutes to cover everything, as you would appreciate. So we'll be looking forward for your collaboration among ourselves and take it forward and contributing back to the higher education industry.
Great. Thank you very much. Just as an added bonus, there is a QR code there. I think there's also a URL in the chat, and we have a Aston Martin Formula One prize draw. It's not the Formula One car, unfortunately, but it's some merch from Aston Martin, who Cognizant sponsor. So if you want to enter there, we'll also follow up this call directly with a copy of this presentation. So any further questions, please do get in touch with us. We'll also leave our contact details on there as well if you need to get in touch with any of us to follow any of this up. But on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to say thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
And you can see from the chat, people are
Goodbye.
sending lots of thanks for the presentation today. Thank you for giving up your time. I know it's been incredibly helpful to people, and there's lots of applause appearing on screen now. So thank you all for giving up so much of your time and allowing 74 more people to see what a very few could see at conference. I'm delighted with the way it's gone. Thank you very much indeed. Bye bye for now.
Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.